Well, for many years, our publications have taught that the anointed were sent into exile in Babylon the Great during the troubled years of World War I. At one point, we said the exile lasted from 1914 through 1918. More recently, we have said that it went from the dark year 1918 to 1919. But the governing body, and we really feel under the direction of Jehovah's Spirit, has recently undertaken a careful, prayerful study of this subject and have come to the conclusion that an adjustment in our understanding is definitely needed. During the 1800s, it became clear that Jehovah's time for release and restoration of true worship was approaching. The Bible students were proving themselves to be very faithful, and they were proving themselves to be in line for restoration. They needed only a final refining, and that took place from 1914 to 1918. And that fulfilled Micah chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. Thus, in 1919, with the release of prominent brothers from prison, the time for full release and restoration had finally arrived. If you recall, the master said it would be very hard to distinguish between the wheat and the weeds. So he told the reapers to wait until the end of the long growing season to separate the two. We now understand that that long growing season is identical to the Babylonian exile. During the centuries, though, of course, they were always genuine Christians, genuine anointed Christians, but they were lost, weren't they? They were indistinguishable from the imitation Christians who surrounded them, engulfing them, you could say, in captivity. But after 1914, Christ followers were in the harvest season. And when the harvest of the wheat got underway in 1919, the distinction between the wheat and the weeds finally became clear. And ever since 1919, the harvest work has prospered more and more abundantly. Well, as we've now discussed, our new understanding certainly harmonizes beautifully, perfectly, with Ezekiel's prophecy of the valley of the dry bones and Jesus' prophetic parable about the wheat and the weeds.
Hello, everybody.
Howdy!
Welcome back to our home.
And our brand of insanity, right?
That too. Now, the reason we played that clip again from the 2015 annual meeting is because we caught something in there that is like, and that's the thing with those of us who have been a Jehovah's Witness almost our entire lives all these years, is we remember stuff. And I think Watchtower is hoping that, most of them will forget their history. The old light.
That's right, Watchtower. See, in your new explanation of when you went into Babylonian captivity, you forgot a very critical facet of what you used to teach. And when we listened to this entire talk from Let in 2015, you forgot about one little detail.
For those of you who want to listen to the entire talk of his, it is on JW Broadcasting, and just scroll down to events and programs and click on that, and then scroll down, and it's the 2015 annual meeting, part 3.
Yes. Well, what you forgot, Watchtower, is what you printed in chapter 25 of the Revelation book.
Well, he explained the part about the valley of the dry bones, though, and how it and now meshes better like a puzzle.
Yeah, but there's one loose thread in how all of that has now, meshed together better with the Bible. You forgot about the reviving of the two witnesses. You go over to page 162, paragraph 7, subheading, the trampling of the courtyard. Right after you quote Revelation 11:2, we will read, "We have noted that the inner courtyard pictures the righteous standing on earth of Spirit-begotten Christians. As we shall see, the reference here is to the literal 42 months extending from October 1914 into 1918, when all professing Christians were put to a severe test." Now keep in mind, this is a literal 42 months now that you were teaching us out of the Revelation book that you did not mention at all in this talk. So, we will go over to page 164.
The two witnesses.
The two witnesses. Now, we all know that in Watchtower language, that the John class really pictures the anointed remnant, the 144,000. Here again, we shall read, "The John class had to preach this message for a definitely stated time, 1,260 days or 42 months, the same length of time that the holy city was to be trampled underfoot." Or in other words, the Watchtower Bible Tract Society. This period seems to be literal. There's that word again, literal. Since it is expressed in two different ways. First in months and then in days. Additionally, at the beginning of the Lord's Day, which would have been 1914, there was a marked period of 3.5 years when the hard experiences of God's people matched the events prophesied here. Starting from the outbreak of the First World War in the latter part of 1914 and continuing to the early part of 1918. And then they talk about preaching in sackcloth and everything else.
But they weren't in Babylonian captivity, though. Well, they were, but I mean, it wasn't that specific time period, though, of the 42 months.
Because now it occurred sometime in the 2nd century. So what we're getting at here is now found on paragraph 16. Similarly, Christendom's leaders defied the Bible students, saying that these had never graduated from theological colleges. Well, that's absolutely true. But God's witnesses had higher credentials as ministers. Now, wait a minute. If you've got higher credentials than ministers, then how come you have to keep flip-flopping? And how come you have to re-identify when you went into spiritual captivity sometime in the 2nd century and when you were released? But in all of that, the literal 42 days has now disappeared, because you forgot to put that into your equation. See, this is what happens when you're dealing with a religion, when their ministers do not come from theological colleges. They begin to wing this stuff as they go along, pretty much like they're doing now. Okay, in 1917, the Bible students published The Finished Mystery, a powerful commentary on Revelation and Ezekiel. This was followed by the distribution of 10 million copies. Yeah, 10 million copies of the 4-page tract, The Bible Students Monthly, with the feature article entitled, "The Fall of Babylon, Why Christendom Must Now Suffer the Final Outcome." In the United States, the irate clergy used the war hysteria as an excuse to get the book banned. In other countries, the books was censored. Nevertheless, God's servants kept fighting back with fiery issues of the 4-page tract entitled Kingdom News. As the Lord's Day proceeded, other publications would make clear Christendom's spiritually defunct condition. So, as Christendom is letting the world know that the Watchtower Bible Tract Society, the Bible students, were really talking out their backside because Christendom realized that there was no theologians among them.
Well, I'm trying to figure out how, this would fit into the prophecy that about the 42 months of them laying on the street corner if...
Well, but see this is all leading up to Rutherford's imprisonment for those literal 42 months to where they killed the two witnesses symbolically, and then when they were released, that pictured their resurrection back into their, God's favored state, so to speak.
So in 1919, it was all cleared up and they were free from everything, right?
Well, that would appear.
That's what Lett said.
Because, see, the whole problem is with these two witnesses, Jehovah's Witnesses, is that if you get away from 1914 to 1919, then you do away with the 42 literal months of captivity. You do away with that, which means when you try to apply that prophecy to your organization through this Revelation book, it doesn't apply no more, because when you redefine when you went into spiritual captivity, you lost that portion of the prophecy that you tried to apply to yourself.
Well, Lett even says, and that's why we put the clip there, that in the 1800s the Bible students started freeing themselves from Babylon the Great.
Yeah, exactly. But what they don't realize is they lost their two witnesses, because you specifically applied the two witnesses from 1918 to 1919 whenever idiot Rutherford and those other Jehovah's Witnesses were imprisoned for, charge of sedition.
Oh, no. The 1974 yearbook said it was because he refused to print propaganda against Germany in the Watchtower and the Awake.
Kim, you just read a day ago or two from the Inside book that the Holy Spirit is incapable of telling lies.
Yeah.
Now, you heard Lett say that the governing body prayed and they have come to a greater understanding of when all of this happened. So either the Holy Spirit lied to you when you were discussing the two witnesses, or you're lying now. What is it, Watchtower? You can't have it both ways. When you done away with 1914 to 1919, you lost. You lost the two witnesses. This is how idiotic they are when they try to, understand the Bible on their own terms without God's Holy Spirit.
So where in that exile now would the 42 months be?
That's exactly right. During that exile, see, you lost it, Watchtower, because you didn't think about that when you were, putting together this little speech about, doing away with the whole 1914 thing and 1919 thing.
Because there is no 42 months now.
Right.
It goes from the 2nd century to 1919.
Now you're talking a couple thousand years. These guys are so stupid. They truly are. And it takes people like Kim and I...
Two knuckleheads?
Two knuckleheads that have studied this 3 times to be able to hear a talk like this and say, wait a minute, what? Yeah, what? Yeah, really? Well, actually, we're studying it now, aren't we?
7
to find the flaw in what they're trying to repackage as, divine understanding. Yeah, Watchtower, when you change that, you lost your two witnesses. Sorry about your luck.
Instead of trying to explain it to them, because obviously the Holy Spirit is having a hard time getting through to them.
Well,
Let's just do it simple. Governing body,
listen to her.
Since there is no specific 42 months now from 1914 to 1918,
right.
That prophecy doesn't fit anymore.
You guys are done.
Simple.
See, you guys are done. It's simple. You lost your 42 months. And as you proclaimed, they were literal months.
Yeah. So where in that exile, unless they want to still say it was the last 42 months leading up to 1919's release.
No, because see, the problem is now you can't even go back and do and apply the year for day, a day for year, or one day as if to 1,000 years as to Jehovah, because no matter how you do that math, Jehovah's Witnesses, you never pinpointed a specific date, just sometime in the 2nd century.
Well, not only that, he didn't say specifically when they were released in 1919, so there's no way to have a specific 42 months. A literal 42 months.
Can't do it.
I guess that means the Revelation book is going to be taken out of the library because it's old light.
Or better yet, Jehovah's Witnesses, you can just go ahead and use this, but tear out the entire chapter of 25 because it's not applicable no more.
There's a lot that by the time you got to the 2006 edition, there was a lot of whiteout.
There's a lot of whiteout. Oh, yeah.
Or like Mark and Cora called it typics.
Mm-hmm. So really, Watchtower, you just keep trying to redefine who and what you are, and the people that have been here the longest will be able to pick out your bullshit.
Yeah. So, thank you everybody for watching. And thank you for all your comments and messages and phone calls too. We had quite a few phone calls today, so thank you so much.
Yep.
And, we really appreciate it, and we appreciate all of you, and all your hard work. And keep up the good work and the research and everything.
Yep.
So, our love to everybody. Bye.
They were shedding false teachings. And they were exposing false religion for being the frauds that they were.